Welcome to Fill in the Blanks. Frank Luntz, who has been a guest on this podcast, is a USC professor and president of Frank I. Luntz and Associates, a survey, research, and consulting firm. Now, when he was on recently, he invited me over to his house for a focus session with a group of USC students. Half of them identify as Republican or at least right-leaning in their political views, and the other half identify as Democrat with a real left-leaning, more liberal view, and there are a few independents in between. And he asked me if I wanted to participate in that to see if we could talk about how to eliminate or at least improve on the divisiveness between these two sides and get them to maybe communicate in a more productive way. I said, well, you better not ask me if you don't want me to show up. And I did show up. We spent several hours with these bright, intelligent, articulate, passionate young people on both sides. And by the way, it was a Friday night with college kids in Los Angeles. And they cared enough to take their Friday night in LA to come over to this professor's house and sit down and go through this. It's just no longer productive to be possessing an us versus them attitude. Look, there's just too much of that. We have to learn to work together. In this episode, we're going to dive into an awful lot about why we have this stance where we're like gunfighters out in the street, where we've squared off and enter any kind of interaction diametrically opposed. Frank and I are going to demonstrate how to have an open and hopefully responsive debate, Republican versus Democrat. To do this, we're going to have to be impromptu, and the only way that works is if you're willing to listen. You can't respond if you don't listen. We're going to do this impromptu in front of the group, so it's going to put he and I on the spot. We're also going to talk about how to get back in touch with the fact that we're dealing with a human being on the other side, because everybody admits that they get so wrapped up in their values that they forget there's actually a human being over there that has a lot in common with me. I'm promising you it's worth a listen, it's worth a look, because I believe it's going to give you two things: an insight into what this divisiveness is based on, and some real hope about the future, because you can't listen to these young people and not come away and say, wow, look at the brains on them.
We're going to debate tonight, and you're going to tell me what topics. I have 22 different questions, and you guys are going to choose 4 of them. I'm going to do 15-minute debates on each. So I want to introduce you to a special guest who cares what you are thinking, what you are feeling. These are why the cameras are here. So come on out, special guest.
Hey, guys. How you doing? Hello. How are you? How you doing? What's up, man?
So what do I have to do to get that kind of reaction?
You have to get taller.
There's one thing that I need you to learn from this whole conversation. It's not what you say that matters, it's what people hear. When you're debating, when you're arguing, look them straight in the eye. I make eye contact and I don't look away, and it's hard. And by the way, one of my problems, and I need help, I really do, is that I look for the person who's most annoyed with me, and that's the person I stare at. So the whole room could be going like this and really into it, and I'm focused on the one individual that's giving me a hard time. Why is that?
I work a lot with juries, and we always went after that person. The 9 we've got, we don't focus on. We focus on the person we don't have. because the real closing argument takes place in the jury room, not in the courtroom. And so we go after that person, and if we can get them, then we know we're making progress. I don't want to preach to the choir. I want to preach to the people that don't agree with me and see if I can persuade them. So I assume that's why you focus on the person that you don't have giving you minimal encouragers with everything you're saying.
So think about this. How often do you see a conservative who comes to your campus that you really don't want there? How often are you trying to move them over to your side versus to dismiss them or embarrass them, to debate them, not to change hearts or minds, but to embarrass? That doesn't win anybody over. College Democrats and college Republicans should be doing so much stuff together because you got one thing in common. You care about your country. You care about your country, don't you? You care about your country, don't you? Don't you realize you've got that in common? That you actually care about what happens in the future of America?
Can I ask a question before you move on?
Yes.
I do a lot of work with law enforcement, particularly with negotiators, hostage negotiators, that sort of thing. What do you think the number one objective is with an FBI negotiator if they're working with someone that's taken hostages? What do you suppose their number one objective is in establishing their relationship with the hostage taker? What do you think?
Preserve life.
Yeah, of course, they want people out. What do you think?
Understand their reasoning.
I'd say try to humanize them in a way that like also connects them like with their family and their friends.
In a sense, some of that is right, but they will tell you this. They have never had a hostage taker surrender or release a hostage until that hostage taker believes the negotiator understands why they took those hostages to begin with. You don't have to agree with it. They have to know you understand why they did what they did. And that hostage taker is never releasing those hostages till he knows that that negotiator gets why he did that. And that's not happening on college campuses. They're not understanding why that person that they're objecting to being there feels the way they feel. I didn't say you have to agree with them, just that you understand why they're taking the position. You may think it's total crap, but you understand why they feel that way.
I'm going to ask Democrats, give me a word or phrase to describe Republicans. Start with the engineer. Word or phrase to describe Republicans.
Fiery.
Nationalist.
Emotional.
Responsible.
Conservative. Prejudiced.
Word or phrase to describe Democrats.
Sensitive.
Emotional.
Naive.
Young.
Activists.
Censors.
When she says prejudice, anyone on this side, what's your reaction to that?
It's an assumption.
Do you think that it's an assumption that's deserved?
In the same way that I am prejudiced, she is equally as prejudiced.
That's a really strong thing to say. What was the word you used?
Censors. Censors.
How do you respond to what he said? Anybody here?
I think what happened in Florida just now is a good example where Disney spoke out against the Don't Say Gay bill, and the Florida legislature moved to take away Disney's special tax status. So that doesn't seem like Democrats censoring to me.
That's one of my biggest issues is like for example, Don't Say Gay isn't even really in the legislation. So it's just the hijacking of these narratives that aren't really entirely accurate that kind of stokes division in itself.
It's a really strong accusation.
How can it stow division when Don't Say Gay specifically is censoring certain information in elementary classrooms?
No, it's the bill is about limiting sexual education and sexual orientation education in the classroom. It's saying that it's the perspective that shouldn't be done in the classroom setting. If you can't teach religion in a public classroom setting, why should you be discussing sexual orientation?
You teach, elementary small children about a virgin birth in the Bible, and that has to do with sexuality.
If a public high school teacher or a professor at USC mentioned Christianity or invoked the virgin birth, I think the Democratic side would be upset with that and try to censor that and cancel them. I mean, they would probably not only be fired, but possibly sued.
But I'm not saying in a classroom setting. I'm saying at home. You're saying that, oh, children are too underdeveloped to be able to understand these kinds of topics, and yet at home and at church, you're talking about these things.
If the state can't pick a side with religion, why is it, teaching kids something like this so young?
Going into the private life, and even back to your point, a lot of what is not even taught in the private life or in the home is about sexual orientation or understanding. You can't dismiss a child for knowing this at such a young age, or even letting them have that voice to have that come out at some point. And a lot of the time, sexual orientation, all that comes to sexual education, yes, partially is taught in the school, but a lot of it is already censored because of legislation.
I have a question for you guys. We don't start our times tables till we're in first grade. We don't start pre-algebra till we're in fifth grade. So why, if we already regulate bipartisan education topics, can we not regulate the ages that you are taught something as important as sexual orientation? We already regulate other subjects.
Because you can't regulate what's not there. The fact of the matter is that the American school system is so lacking in our sexual education programs in the first place that any removal of some sort of education is going to really impact students. I was able to learn about, healthy sexual relationships or healthy relationships dynamics. If I had learned that in school, I think it would have been a lot healthier for me than learning about it on the internet where that's unregulated and that's going to be unsafe. Even learning the vocabulary words for certain body parts can help children feel more empowered and confident in confronting sexual abusers or knowing, is this a safe touch? Is this not a safe touch? These are the kinds of things that I personally don't trust my fellow Americans to teach their children at the certain ages.
So you said that we're lacking in a quality education in the country. My question to you is, what is the purpose of going to school? It's a simple question. What is the purpose? What are we meant to learn in school?
What we learn in school, in addition to subjects that prepare us for taking part in the marketplace, is how to be citizens in a democracy and how to interact with other people socially. The grooming language we see coming from the Republican Party, accusations towards LGBTQ people and Democrats that we are supporting grooming, that we are trying to put children in sexual danger, is quite frankly beyond the pale. And the right-wing media that's spreading it is pretty dangerous and is probably going to result in real-world material harm.
You got tons of families that are now sending their kids off to school, expecting them to be learning the basics of language and learning about numbers and certain things. You're talking about third, fourth, fifth grade. The law only talks about K-3. We're talking about tiny, young kids that shouldn't be even having to think about these things. If they are to come to these thoughts, let them come to fruition naturally.
I can tell you in section 3 on line 67, the word specifically that is used in the bill is prohibited. How can you tell me that the word prohibited is not censorship?
Can I ask two questions? Just by show of hands, who has read this Florida bill?
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of you. So there are about 50 students in this room right now.
I haven't read it, so I'm not trying to shame anybody for not having read it because I haven't read the bill. Who should decide what it is that should be taught? Who should make up that lesson plan? What I'm saying is, what should be the credentials of the person that decides the content of that curriculum? Should it be a pediatrician, a child psychologist, a developmental psychologist?
I mean, school is a social investment into our societies. It's fundamentally there to build and grow a society, to make it more economically viable. And yeah, sure, it's a state matter, but we also have to look at schools as a social investment in terms of keeping societal cohesion.
What credentials should someone have that puts together that curriculum?
It shouldn't be one person, first of all. It should be multiple people with doctorates in education, people in child psychology, people in, pediatricians who know the hormonal changes of kids over each grade. Kids are such a sensitive and such a temperamental project, and we have to be willing to look at them age to age. We can't, use a business market or like any format that doesn't look at them as individuals who are going through severe changes.
Who agrees that it should be a multidisciplinary task force that, okay, see, you've got some agreement on both sides of that commonsensically it should be a multidisciplinary group that comes together and takes into account age appropriateness, psychological readiness, physicality, hormonal maturation, things of that nature.
But what you just did is something that rarely happens in these debates. You gave a rationed, specific answer. You brought people together with that answer. Yes, two thumbs up. Good for you for what you did. And I want to compliment you guys because several of you asked them questions. How often does that happen in a debate? Where you actually seek to learn something from the other side. So why is it that you don't want to have these students canceled? And yet you cancel. You're saying to them, let this education happen. Let people decide. But you don't allow people to come onto campus that have points of view that are different than yours.
I think the issue here more is the animosity from both sides. I've experienced it myself from your members last year, one of them, and this isn't in a group chat, he made fun of me, called me Kamala because I am outspoken. And you're right here. That happened. And at the end of the day, it's not, where's the screenshot? Who cares about that? That's not what we're here for. We're here to build bridges and understand each other. And that's really hard to do when there are names being called and there's just, looks and certain things where we can't build bridges that way.
Number one, I didn't say you're Kamala. I said you're laughing like Kamala because we had a bipartisan event. It was not a debate.
I also think that doesn't really matter.
Okay, look, why am I getting interrupted? We're all being respectful here. Thank you.
And you guys, I'm seeing people across the room.
Again, I didn't even finish my sentence.
I just wanted to point out that I have friends on the other side, and I know that even we have mutual friends who's an outspoken Republican, right? I'm so sorry I interrupted you as well because I do want to be respectful of your voice as well, so I apologize. But this is so counterproductive.
You were laughing at our members while our members were speaking. We pointed it out multiple times, and you guys kept laughing and laughing and laughing at all of us.
I'm really sorry to anyone who had to experience that. I'm not on USC Dems. I'm just kind of here. But we have to consider the social context of where we exist and the fact that we're post-Zoom and a lot of us are chronically online. And we, at least I know, and I think a lot of people should know, algorithms intentionally make echo spaces that become more and more divisive because fundamentally, these people who create these algorithms don't care about us. They don't care about our feelings. They care about engagement. I get scared sometimes when I go to Republican spaces because I have the assumption that I'm going to be hated against because of, my skin tone or my sexuality or whatever. And obviously that may not be true. But on the same end, I feel like there's a lot of Republicans who come in looking at Democrats and people on the left in general as just, naive or woke, to use the words you guys said, which I don't feel is an accurate description of either side to look at someone and be immediately hateful, immediately naive. It does not produce what we're trying to do here, which is have a constructive conversation instead of, getting angry at each other, which I understand why you would get angry at each other. This is everything you guys have said is very fair in terms of anger. I'm very sorry if anyone has called you anything horrible. That sucks.
So I'm not in USC GOP or USC Dems. And I think that's terrible. I think that's horrible. And just to sympathize or empathize, coming back to Frank's original question, which is, are you scared on campus? I would say that it's completely valid to kind of question sharing your political feelings when the demographics of a college campus are generally those that are more liberal, especially having experienced something so directly cancel culture.
I'm not involved with either parties, and I'm actually a student journalist, and I would say personally and professionally, I see the polarization and the intolerance have a really negative effect on our campus and in our political discourse, people just don't want to talk politics. People don't want to talk about the news of the day. People don't want to comment on anything because they're worried one way or the other that what they're going to say is going to be judged fiercely by people. And it's causing this culture where people don't want to engage in public discourse. They don't want to get involved. They don't want to participate. And I think we can all agree that that is very harmful to our democracy.
For me personally, like, to use Colby's word, this is kind of horrifying. Like, this doesn't seem to be like a politics issue. It seems like you guys just fundamentally don't like each other as people. It seems like this is going beyond your political beliefs and is really being like an assault on both sides of your characters.
Is this not an example of passion?
No, it goes beyond passion. I'm confident in that. I know what I'm saying.
Do you buy this?
By the way, I said that before we started using similes like Italian fascism.
There's no point to using words like that on both sides other than trying to get your point across.
Why do you think people on this side are this passionate or post-passionate to the point of like what you believe is aggression and anger? And I fully will believe and understand that because, yeah, some of what's happened to you, what you've been explaining sounds fucking horrifying. Sorry. It's horrifying. And that sucks. But why do you think people have this response towards conservative politics when we feel the exact same way about conservative politics, that we feel that we're getting this response from conservative people?
I don't think it's so much a political issue. Like, yes, politics got radicalized on both sides, yes, but it's a generational issue. We have the attention span worse than a goldfish. People cannot even watch a 15-second TikTok. I'm surprised everyone is still here, right? How can people actually engage in a conversation that, it's for 2 hours if we can't even watch a 15-second TikTok? It's a generational issue.
I think that this conversation has brought out some of the worst in both sides, in vocabulary, but also just where both sides are getting pretty riled up, right? And that's just not my experience with Republicans on campus. And I really hope that that's not your overall experience with Democrats on campus. I mean, I hope. I think I'm getting to know everybody and I'm feeling a lot more empathetic towards your point of view.
Can I respond to that?
But I want Dr.
Oh, yeah,
Phil
let
to
Dr. Phil go first.
I'm wondering, are you trying to win an argument, make your point, and get it across, bang, 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 or are you trying to solve a problem, reach a common ground? Because I felt like for a while there was some problem solving going on, and then I think it deteriorated into trying to win an argument.
Were you trying to win an argument or were you trying to solve a problem?
I think we try to win arguments as part of trying to solve a larger problem.
His point is important. The best thing that you all have done on this side is that you ask questions, because that will both, through the question, you'll get a better understanding of where they come from. And in the way that you frame the question, you're boxing them in a little bit. So you're doing both at the same time, but you're giving them the chance to be heard. And on your side, there are several of you who are really reaching out to that side, who are trying to find that common ground because there's a humanity. My life is about conflict resolution now. And I believe that we are far worse today because of our previous president, and I now say so publicly, because he never saw conflict he didn't want to engage and provoke and make much, much worse. And there was a time when I didn't want to say that because I did not want to get the shit of him and all the people who support him, and it just wasn't worth it. And then I realized the damage that he'd done to you all. There are several people over here. You want them to feel what you felt, but you want to punish them for what you felt, as opposed to establish empathy. We don't spend enough time trying to walk in each other's shoes. We don't spend enough time trying to learn each other's challenges. You have been blessed with instant information, instant friendships, instant everything across the globe. And what do? You find a reason to beat each other up.
But don't we forget that there are people behind these beliefs? Everybody's been sitting for a long time. Can we do like a 2-minute exercise? Let me tell you, here's what I want you to do. I want people to pair up in what I call a standing dyad. And there's a rule to this. There can be zero small talk. You can't say anything. Let me have you. And I'll use you as an example. Come right here. And let me have you. Right here. Come on. Okay, this is a standing dyad. You can't say a word. I just want you to get right here and make eye contact. You're in each other's personal space. We got left and right. I just want you to make eye contact. Don't say anything, just look at each other. Now, everybody on the left, everybody on the right, find a partner. No, don't talk, just find a partner and get in a standing dyad like this. Just make eye contact. Don't say anything. Look each other in the eye. Don't look away. We don't do this enough. And obviously, I'm leaving you here. This is the ultimate pregnant pause. And you probably haven't looked anybody in the eye this much for a long, long time. And realize you're looking at another human being. They have parents, brothers, sisters. They get up in the morning. They have to decide what to wear. They have to decide what they're going to do. If you don't start on a human-to-human basis, then you're building a house on sand. If you don't treat each other as human beings, then whether it's crime, violence, mugging, insults, whatever kind of disrespect for another person becomes so much easier if you don't regard them personally. And if you do regard them personally, then it's so much harder to disrespect and disregard the worth of that human being. And it's such a fast-paced society that we don't really take time to look at each other and regard each other as human beings. I think that's just so important.
So I'm going to give you 2 pieces of advice. Number 1 is you really need to show and you really need to mean that you get it, that you understand it. I get that something really bad happened to you, but understand why it happened. Second, please don't make a statement, make a difference. My students know I say this all the time, and I mean it so much. I actually want you to be successful. But the only way you do so is not by trying to own people or embarrass them or use language to insult them or drive them apart. You should be bear hugging them. You should be pulling them to your side, not pushing them away. Love them more than they love each other. Respect them more than they respect themselves. And watch how many people will listen to you and learn from you, and their ideas may change. What would you give them?
I spend a lot of time hearing what isn't said and reading what people say non-verbally. When I saw you talking about your experiences on campus, both sides, you articulating what you were saying and what you were reading and on the screenshots, I felt a lot of pain being experienced. I think anytime I see anger, I see hurt, fear, and frustration. If you look past the anger, behind it is hurt, fear, and frustration. I believe in the principle of reciprocity. You get what you give. What you put out in the universe is what comes back. If you look within yourself and give away what you need the most, you'll be amazed how fast you fill yourself up. If you feel marginalized on campus or you feel attacked, reach out to somebody that you know has got to be feeling that way. Like when he was being attacked, for example, if somebody had gone and say, man, this must really suck for you, and I'm sorry about that. I know you're a human being, and I love you as a human being. I promise you would have gone home feeling better that day. Give away what you need the most, and it fills you up, which kind of goes back to what I was having you do when I was having you look in each other's eyes. The second piece of advice is I really do believe that the job of every one of you in this room is to star in your own life. And you got to ask yourself what kind of star you want to be. Is it inspirational or is it aggressive? What kind of star do you want to be in your own life? I'm so impressed that all of you came here tonight to do this. It just blows my mind that you give a shit enough about this life, this world, where we are right now, that you came here tonight just to talk about this and express yourselves and hear each other. That just, I'm like, holy shit. I'm so impressed. I would not have done this at your age.
Based on what you've seen here today, do you feel that there's actual hope for bridging that gap between us? Do you have hope for our generation? Because I know you don't, but one day I really hope you will.
I have more hope because of this conversation. Some of you are bright as hell, and I want you in my class. I'm listening to how you're putting forward your arguments and the stuff that you know. For those of you who sat here and did not participate, I don't know why. Because you're not going to make things better unless you get involved. The tension back and forth is unnecessary. Cut it out for those of you who are participating in it. But I think you're getting a good education. I hope so. And it really is a privilege to be able to do this. And you have no idea how great it is to sit next to him.
Well, just know I'm more optimistic than he is, and know that I'm working on him. And I got to tell you, he's moving a little bit. Like I said, I hear what isn't said, and I think there've been a lot of people that didn't comment that have really been processing a lot of what's going on tonight. And I think the fact that they're here is participating. I really commend those that are here, even if you didn't talk tonight. That's a lot of effort to be here on a Friday night. Come listen to a couple of old guys talking. I mean, that's pretty good. So I give everybody credit for being here. And I am optimistic about this generation. I'm more optimistic after tonight than I was before I got here, and I was optimistic before I got here. How do you deal with these people? How do you live with these people? How do you get along with these people? And how do you recognize if you actually have one of these people in your life? I recommend that you don't try and fix a narcissist. I've made stabs at that. I've made efforts at that. When I was a young lion and was going to heal the world, I'd take on whatever. It's above your pay grade. You're not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. Now, there are those that believe that you're not going to change a narcissist no matter what you do. And people ask me, well, why not? Can't anybody learn to change? And sure, in theory, anybody can learn to change. People ask me where these folks come from. Why does somebody turn out to be a narcissist and somebody else doesn't? And isn't it true if you kind of know that, then maybe you know where to start working on them to change them? Nobody really knows where this comes from. I'll tell you what some of the primary theories are. Maybe it'll give you some insight to excuse yourself from feeling responsible for fixing it. You know, people ask, is this something genetic? Is it environmental? I think the research is very ambiguous, but I think most people would agree that it's a learned behavior. Most people would agree that they come from the extremes of parenting. They either had a parent that was way overprotective and, carried the kid around on a satin pillow and made the child believe that they were entitled by turning them into spoiled brats. And I always say, we're not raising children, we're raising adults. And so whatever you do with your child, that's what you're creating as an adult. So I said the extremes of parenting. One is you've treated your child in such a way that they become a spoiled brat child, so they become a spoiled brat adult. And the other extreme of parenting, of course, is if they've been neglected or abused. And so this is a reaction of I'm going to be so arrogant. It's kind of a get them before they get me strategy in life, where they just become so self-protective by being arrogant and haughty and entitled that nobody's ever going to do that to me again, because I'm going to put myself above everybody so I can't be hurt. I'm going to fly above the crowd where I can't be hurt. These are theories. I'm not presenting this to you as fact. I'm telling you what psychodynamicists say when they say, look at the parents if you want to understand why somebody turns out the way they do as an adult. Now, does that make it easier for you to suffer these people or not? Maybe it does. If you are not that way and you have empathy, maybe understanding it gives you a little bit of staying power. But as I said before, I'm one of those people that thinks anybody can change. I'm the incurable optimist, but these are people that just don't have a good prognosis. There's some mental illness problems that have good prognosis, like phobias. Somebody has a phobia, anxiety, you can deal with that, and it's got a very good prognosis. Personality disorders don't have the best prognosis because in the individual's eyes, what they're doing is working for them. And so their belief is, why fix what ain't broke? A narcissist doesn't respond well in part because they don't see a problem. They think they're special. They think they're unique. They think they got it going on. They live in a fantasy world in which they are the top dog. They are the unique, entitled, special individual. So what is there to fix? It's the rest of you that have the problem. Catch up. Get your game together. I don't have the problem. You have the problem. So you can't change what you don't acknowledge. Y'all have heard me say that. A narcissist is not going to acknowledge that they have a problem. So why would they have a to-do list? And the answer is they wouldn't. They don't. They don't have a to-do list. Most personality disorders don't have a to-do list because they think what they're doing is protecting them, working for them, getting them what they want. So if you're not going to change them, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to have to learn to deal with them. You're going to have to learn to not allow yourself to be sucked down by these people, to not get into their ego suck hole where you just get pulled down into this dark, bottomless pit where you cannot ever do enough to make these people happy. And the first thing I want you to do is establish some boundaries and recognize it's not your job to fix them. You couldn't fix them if it was your job. And you cannot let them have the power to determine how you feel about who you are. If you give them the power to determine your self-worth in a relationship, whether it's romantic or as a family member or at work, whatever the situation, if you give them the power to determine your validation, your self-worth, I promise you, you're going to lose because they have to put you down in order for them to feel better. It's what I call leveling. They either have to build themselves up so they feel equal to or superior, or they have to shoot you down so they don't think you've got anything over on them. That's leveling. They can't be in a one-down position ever. So they always have to, in some way, keep you from having any advantage. And if you feel good about yourself, if you are at peace with yourself, if you think you're in touch with your authentic self, if you have a good sense of self-worth, a good definition of self, they can't suffer that. because it gives you a sense of power and peace that they just can't endure. So they have to take that away from you. They have to tear that down. You cannot let that happen. So that's why I say you've got to set up a boundary, and you cannot take the bait, and you cannot be the bait. And let me tell you what I mean by that. These people are going to say things that anybody would find offensive. They're going to violate your rights. And it's not just being assertive. Assertiveness is when someone acts in a way to protect their own rights, but they do it without stepping on anyone else's rights. Aggressiveness is when people assert their rights and they trample all over someone else's rights. That's what a narcissist does. They do it by gaslighting, and I'm going to tell you what I mean by that. And if you're dealing with a narcissist, get out your fire extinguisher, because you're going to get gaslit. They are going to talk to you in such a way that anything that goes wrong is your fault. And anything that they do is your fault. You're going to hear phrases, I mentioned a few of them before. I didn't say that. I'm not mad. It's not that big a deal. Why are you being so sensitive? Why are you blowing this all out of proportion? What is wrong with you? And it all keeps coming back to what's wrong with you. And they're happy to answer that question. You're too sensitive. That's the gaslighting phrases you're going to hear. And if you don't have a boundary, you're going to take that bait and start questioning yourself whether or not, well, maybe it's me. Maybe it's me. But what do I want you to do? I want you to remember this conversation that we're having right now. I told you this was going to be a little different, that I just wanted it to be a conversation. And I want you to remember when this happens, you know what? When I was on my walk and I was listening to Dr. Phil in my earbuds, this is exactly what he was talking about. You decided to run for Congress.
Mm-hmm.
Did you think you were going to win?
Oh gosh, yes. You never run unless you think you're going to win. I was so naive. I ran in 2010 against an 18-year incumbent in a Democratic primary. I thought I'd shake every hand, meet every voter. I had no idea what I was doing, Dr. Phil. Like, I was this daughter of refugees. I didn't know how to build a campaign. I didn't know how to ask for money. I didn't know how to walk into a senior center and give a talk. I mean, my first interview was on Chris Matthews. I'd never gone on TV before. He was so mean to me, but it was the best 10 months of my life, because there's nothing like living afraid in terms of really just like I am not, by going through that experience, I am not terrified of anything. Next week I got to give a commencement speech at Yale in front of 20,000 people. And I'm like, bring it, because of that congressional race, because every fearful thing that ever happened to me, many ways happened at 33. And so, but yes, when you run for office, you think you're going to win. And, the thing is, I ran again and I lost again. That's harder because, your second race, you've kind of you didn't make the same mistakes. You learned all the lessons. You run a more perfect campaign. And then you realize, oh, maybe this is about me. Like, maybe you just didn't want to elect me. But even that, Dr. Phil, it's like a gift because, when you think about some of the best athletes, LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, what kept them driving, what kept them, again, drilling 16, 17 hours a day was something happened to them early in their career. Whether, they didn't make a shot or they didn't get picked on the first draft, something happened to them. And that put a chip on their shoulder. So I've had a chip on my shoulder. You read my bio in the beginning, be like, wow, you've accomplished it. Because I had a chip on my shoulder from the time I was 33 and was like, all right, you're not going to pick me. I'm going to show you that I can make a difference. And every day since then, I get up and do my 16-hour-a-day drills, you know what I mean? And show that I am worthy of being a public servant, that I am worthy of being an American. I'm worthy of fighting for people and that I can make a difference, even though you didn't think I could.
Yeah. And if somebody had said, well, we'll just change you over to soccer, you wouldn't be sitting here today, is your point, right? You didn't change yourself over to soccer. You said, no, I'm going to keep doing this. I don't care if I can do a cartwheel or not. I'm going to keep doing this until I get it right. And you're right. Michael Jordan, I think it was middle school. They called it junior high back then. I think he was cut from one of his school basketball teams. He wasn't good. He didn't make the team. And so he went out by himself and said, oh, you're going to cut me? Okay, watch this.
Right.
Look what happened since then. You really do find resiliency from those things. But what's the message to parents of young girls? How do they do that? How do they instill that in them?
Stop protecting them. Stop protecting them. That's what a friend of mine was telling me a story about her father when she was 8. I think he was in the military. One day he just walked in and he just took her pillow. I was like, you don't need it anymore. Like, it's like that kind of just tough. Like, we coddle our kids. We protect them. You know, if they forget to bring their homework at school, we don't know what it feels, let them feels like to make a mistake or to not get picked. Like, we're like, I still have parents, who call me for their daughters to write recommendation letters for them. I'm like, they're 18. They can email me. So it's just like, we gotta stop that. I again grew up with like immigrant parents that were working class. They didn't know what I was doing. I wasn't in sports. I mean, they didn't know where I applied to college. They didn't read my recommendation letter. Nothing. And I turned out fine. So I just think this whole intensive parenting, this over coddling, we're literally building zero resiliency in our children. And then we wonder why they're medicated. We wonder why, they're not able to deal with strife.
See, that's what I worry about with the generation in the universities right now, not just women, but these kids that are not being required to do some of the things that generations before them have done. They're not having to take the other position. They're not having to deal with adversity. If I have 2 applicants in front of me, and one of them has a college degree and the other does not, but they're matched in every way other than that, same intelligence, same work history, same whatever, matched the same way. I used to always say I would opt for the college graduate, even if it was an irrelevant degree to what I was looking for, because I knew one thing about them I didn't know about the other. I knew they could set a long-term goal. They could stay focused on that goal across 4 or 5 years. I knew they could get along with people. I knew they could put up with professors they didn't like, and it was their job to get along with the professor, not the professor's job to get along with them. I knew they could get projects in on time. I knew they could do what it took to get through a degree. I don't know that about college graduates anymore. I really don't. It seems like the system is bending itself to them as much as them bending themselves to the demands of the system, at least not nearly as much as it seemed like it was a generation ago or 2 generations ago. And I think we're coddling them too much.
Yeah, but I think it's shifted. Listen, I think, where did that come from? Some of that did come from the fact of that technology. We had so much misinformation and disinformation that we felt like we had to coddle and protect, infantilize our children and just people, to not be able to kind of make their own decisions and come up with their own conclusions. And I think that, when I meet young people today, they're actually very well researched, meaning like they really go out there and see every piece of it. So it's funny, like as they come up to you can't like just tell them things and they'll believe it. They really do like ask questions and think about it. So in some ways, maybe colleges haven't caught up to where kids are at. And I think that we just, again, have to like infuse a culture where if you really want to make a difference on climate change, you got to actually sit in the room and listen to climate deniers. Because the only way you get stronger in your convictions and make the difference that you need to make is when you hear the opposing point of view. And I think that is just a shift, right, that we have to continue to say and make to people.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I've met with a lot of college students in the last year, And there are things about them that bother me. But one of the things I've noticed is they are so smart.
They're so smart.
They are so damn smart. They have so much information at their fingertips, and they have the command of that information. If they will just get a transmission, if they'll just get into gear, they are so smart. I just know if they will get that part of it solved, I feel good about the future of mankind because they got so much information and they're so smart and so articulate. Boy, they can make an argument.
But this is what I find. That's why I don't know if it's the kids saying, I don't want to hear from the Taliban. I think it's maybe the adults. Because I actually think because they actually believe, like you have the wisdom to, go through the information, decide for their own what is true and what is not true. Again, if I think that they would want to hear all sides, all pieces. Again, just to get stronger in your conviction or to learn. So I don't know. I think that is something. I think the pendulum is swinging on that. I really do. I do think that this generation is exceptionally bright.
Don't leave me alone at a party. You know what I mean? Unless I know everybody there. But I think with live shows, I just kind of decided I'm not gonna waste time being nervous because it's a fun thing to do. And then I think I just quickly realized that there's nothing really to get nervous about.
Yeah. I hate to tell you that, but I guess under the category of like father, like son, my personal hell is a cocktail party.
Yeah.
I mean, that is my personal hell.
Small talk to me.
I don't think I'm interesting to talk to small talk wise. I'm not interested in what they have to say small talk wise.
Yeah.
So I would rather get a root canal than,
and I think
than be alone at a cocktail party.
I think people think I'm an asshole sometimes too because I'm so quiet.
Yeah.
And I usually am judging you, but not meaning to put it on my face. I just, I like.
You observe.
I think it's fascinating to me to watch people try to make small talk when it's not necessary. It's more that I'm amused at that idea, but then you try to rope me into it, and I'm like, no. I'm good.
Yeah.
But put me on stage, I have no problem. You could put me in front of, 100,000 people and say, kill 5 minutes, and
no problem.
That doesn't bother me at all.
I'm better at the cocktail party. I
Yeah.
could do that all day.
Totally.
Yeah, I'm the same way. You put me in front of 100,000 people with something to do, I'm fine.
No way.
I'd rather do that than be in somebody's living room having to chit chat.
Yeah.
I'm just insecure about that. I'd rather not do it.
He really hates it. And I am the worst at it because I get stuck in it for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how to get myself out of it.
Do you get nervous if you know the other one's watching you?
No.
No.
Doesn't bother you?
No.
I'd rather her come watch.
I think if I did like a live show and you were there, maybe I'd get a little like.
Yeah.
I guess we haven't done that yet, so we'll see.
Were you guys nervous when the baby was born? When it was coming?
Like when it was actually happening?
No, just in the time leading up to it.
I think I don't think we were nervous. I think we were excited, but I think we were definitely anticipating like, this is going to be a very big change and how we were going to deal with that. Yeah, I guess who am I kidding? Of course we were nervous.
Yeah. It wasn't like I wasn't nervous because I felt unprepared.
Mm-hmm.
I think I get more nervous at like unknown things. And, that's obviously pretty much every unknown thing that you could not know. Which is, I guess, maybe that's why I don't get nervous to perform is because I know pretty much everything that could possibly happen.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, baby was like,
I think we were excited. I think we were excited. I think we were definitely like, how is this going to affect our dynamic in our life, right? Like we want to make sure we still have our life and then we have a baby. And I feel like most people who have new babies, they can't separate the two. But we've done a good job, I think, for the most part.
Well, as funny as it sounds, you kind of had practice with the ding.
Completely.
With the Dinger because and Dinger's their dog.
Yeah.
And so tell us about Dinger.
He has more energy than 3 babies. So kind of,
He might be cuter than a baby. He really might.
Not our baby, but every other baby.
Right.
But Dinger is literally the best dog that you could dream up. He's like the weird science dog.
He's like a human.
If you could like put all the traits of a dog that you want into a computer, they'd print out Dinger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and where'd you get Dinger?
at the SPCA in Hawthorne.
And you almost didn't get ding, right?
Yeah.
Because some worker told you some crap.
Yeah, somebody said that he was temperamental and bipolar, and so he had a red dot on his tag. And so I guess that's why a lot of people were walking by and not paying attention to him, which wound up being good for me because he was sitting there, and the lady that runs the whole SPCA was kind of giving us a tour. And, you know, I was like sick of looking at, this sounds mean, but I was like, I was sick of looking at mangy dogs because it was like made me feel bad that these dogs were like so uncomfortable. And so I was kind of hanging back, and she didn't realize that I was kind of, you know, falling back on her tour. And I looked down, and Dinger was just kind of like, hey man. And I just like, hey, I totally interrupted her. I was like, hey, what about him? And she went into the computer and saw what the red tag meant. And she was like, that's not right. And so she took me into a pen, like one of the play pens, and brought him out. And I just kind of sat there with him for probably 30 minutes. And he, you know, did a bunch of zoomies. And then eventually he just kind of put his head on my lap.
I mean, and if you know Dinger, that's the cutest thing in the entire world. Yeah. So meant to be. Your relationship with Dinger is like your relationship with me.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. You both picked me.
Yeah.
Not the other way around.
Yeah, so you got the ding, and you've had him how long?
I don't know. He's, because I don't know how old he is. Nobody could guess how old he was because he has the energy still of a 6-month-old puppy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then but he's like a kind of funny in between size. So I think he's probably 3 years old, and I've probably had him 2.5 years. Well, I guess not now, 3.5 years.
Huh.
So he's probably closer to 4. But he's a good dude.
And how is he with the baby?
He's pretty indifferent.
He goes up to her and kind of sniffs her and stuff now, but he's not, we haven't gotten like full connection between the two of them, but he definitely goes and notices her and spends
he knows
he's pretty uninterested though after a second.
He knows why she's there.
Yeah.
But
when she
I
grows.
think, because she can't really interact with him.
Right.
You know, obviously.
But he sniffs her and all that.
He sniffed her. He licked her on the cheek yesterday, and she smiled. So they're definitely communicating somehow. We just don't know how.